I feel like you were going to talk about the negatives and the declaration. I think the further away we get from that, not least because England lost, just doesn't make any sense. Just the way Root was going, the stickability with Robinson, and Dave Tickner wrote about this today and made a brilliant point. Root's just hit 20 off line over with the help of Robinson for a 4, I think. But they've hit 20 off Nathan Lyon there. They're going great guns. They could have bat out of the day. You could probably, if you wanted to, you could probably have got. I suppose they wouldn't have got 2 overs off them, but there was a way of doing that in the morning that would have worked. Opening the batting in England is hard, whether you do it at night or during the day. And then to have taken them out of their stride when they are sprinting, and the way England were crawling to their third, to that second innings total they eventually got, that doesn't really wash the idea that I suppose even the general idea that playing attacking cricket when you're batting is great because you're ramping up one side of the equation, the run rate. But then you take that away by dropping the other in terms of overs. You're giving yourself fewer overs to score those kind of runs. And it, regardless of what they say about keeping a team in it, they want to bat teams out of game as quickly as possible and dictate everything from there. And they decided not to do that.
And I mean, obviously, conversely, talking about outcomes, if England take a wicket in that spell, Nasha, then it's genius. And there were people willing to argue that the next morning, the bowlers get a second crack and a second wind, while fresh, and Broad does go bang bang. So again, we're talking about the difference between outcomes and processes.
Yeah, and the difference that Robinson and Anderson fall in consecutive balls, and England are bowled out for 394 in the over after that.
Which is what Stokes said.
But the interesting is kind of, and listening to Vish's argument just then about it is a persuasive one, because at the time, and I guess the whole thing about watching Bazball live for the first time was a fascinating experience, because he even from
being at Woodstock or something.
Yeah, even from the side that we're on and sort of thing, you kind of got sucked into it all a little bit, kind of like, wow, this is like, what the hell is happening here? And kind of like, I remember turning to, it was either Matt or Vish during the game, and when Root has got his 100 and whatever, and I said, could Stokes see the guy? I should have tweeted it really, because then it would have looked brilliantly kind of Nostradamus from me. But I said, could Stokes declare? You look at the time and things, and kind of the thing was, no, probably not, because of what Vish has just said there about they were flying and they could get another 20, 30 wins. So when it happened, I think I was a bit sort of swept up and this is what we've all heard about over the other side of the world about Bazball and whatever. And I half imagined Broad nicking off Warner in that 4 overs and it just being all hell breaking loose. That didn't happen. But so, yeah, I think having spent a few more days thinking about it, and I know generally in the Australian pack that's over here covering it, it was a bit like, what the hell's he doing here? This is just stupid, basically. This is like they've cost themselves. Everyone's put about the 50-run mark on it. Even Usman Khawaja, who we spoke to last night, he was asked about it. He said, they could have scored another 50 runs, I reckon. So that kind of seems to be the consensus. So
obviously, if they had, the game would have been a draw.
Well,
because of the way things panned out.
And then Usman then said, I don't believe in sliding door moments, so it's a slightly pointless conversation to be having, he did say, when with the questions were being asked to him. But I think over the course of a few days, I've probably come down on the side that, he just got a bit
too funky.
A bit too funky, a bit too wild there, and kind of, although, as we know, one of their sayings, is think of the good that can happen rather than the bad in a situation, isn't it? Sort of thing. That's run towards danger and all those other phrases.
Plan like you'll live forever.
Yeah, exactly.
Live like you'll die tomorrow.
Four more of these tests and we're not living forever. There's no way that's happening. I think that you'd say, like I said before, you can go through a game like this and pick out so many moments. I guess the difference with that one is that it was in England's hands there to continue, at least taking the innings to a natural conclusion, and then going over to Australia. Australia kind of, I don't think, minded having been declared on the first day. One of the things, just briefly go back to Australia, is again, they sort of, and it's happened last few series, I think by and large, they sort of they're leaving their ego out of this a little bit, sort of thing. So right down to the point of like the Mitchell Stark selection and things like that. I'm not saying Mitch Stark will have been happy to not play at Edgbaston, but one thing that Cummins and McDonald in this group has formed is, seems to be not. Maybe I'm not saying that perhaps other generations were completely ego driven, but there were some big characters in some of the Australian teams, and
I don't think it'd be too controversial to say that.
and while there still are, it feels as though they don't let it dominate them on the field, and I thought that was quite noticeable as well during this game.
Vish, Stokes he said in his post match that they're going to keep making these sorts of moves. I mean, we've talked about this, in WhatsApp groups and so on. I mean, are England in danger of becoming sort of beyond parody with the Bazball thing? This is for the good of Test cricket. We're saving Test cricket. We're inspiring a generation of good losers. Maybe that's.
And is that not the British way?
I was going to say, haven't the British always been good losers?
Don't we want our kids to grow up being, happy to win or lose, whatever? Just enjoy, play it for the game,
taking part that counts.
Exactly.
But he did say among all that like we tell ourselves that we put the result lower down because we kind of need that. We don't need the pressure of this is do or die. The enjoyment comes first, and with the enjoyment comes the results. And you can't argue with that really over the last year, given what England have done, and even really seeing how this test has played out, because they made a few mistakes. They made some rudimentary mistakes, and they took the game damn deep. And another day,
and almost
they win.
The catching aspect of it, without getting too deep into it, is almost the least Bazball thing about it, because it's literally catching. Well, you can't do that in any fancier style. Well, I mean, I suppose if Stokes had taken that, Stokes had taken that blinder, that would have been a Bazball catch, wouldn't it, to probably win the Test match. But kind of the catching, not so much the ground fielding. And we spoke about this during the game, and again, interesting watching England for the first time live in a little while. How much they were sprinting for those ground balls in the field, and that's something the Aussies noticed as well. That they noticed how hard they were going, and that's clearly a Brendan thing. We all saw him running into the fence when he was a player, but seeing it live,
Jack
because
Leach out in the first
the first place to do it got a concussion
because obviously when you watch highlights of an England Test match, you don't see all those moments in a 20-minute highlights package. So to see them do that live is interesting. But catching, there isn't really a fancier way, a snazzier way to do it. It's a skill, it's a repetition, it's being ready for the catch. So
it's almost boring, isn't it?
Well, it's the most fun about that you can't really change.
There's no golf
cricket.
Element.
Yeah. But there's also the message from the top is not like, you know what, drop a couple. Let's see what happens.
Let's dangle
just
the carrot.
To see if we can create some more.
Let's
chances.
drop the carrot.
Let's drop the carrot.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.